Rabbi say, welcome back to Yerushalmi Shabbos. We are holding Nun Vav Amud Beit. Now, we were talking about something which was included in a klal, and then it was singled out to teach about the klal, which is often called klal of prat. Okay, is that always said, even when the klal is a positive mitzvah and the prat, the specific, is a negative? So klal ba'aseh, or prat b'loisaseh. So if the specific is in the negative, Mil said Rabbi Lazar Amra, from Rabbi Lazar we can learn klal of prat. So this is also considered klal of prat. So it's something which was in the klal, excluded to teach on the klal. And the Gemara brings the words of Rabbi Lazar. First it goes and explains them, and then it proves from his words that it is a klal of prat. The Amra Rabbi Lazar says, like in adei harisha b'shvius. So now, when you're plowing during Shemitah, you can get lashes for that, like anyone going against the loisaseh. Rabbi Yochanan, he says, ain't like an adei harisha b'shvius. He said, no, there's no malchus for plowing. The issa of the Torah was not said in the lashon of a loisaseh. So let's see, what's this argument? Ma tamid Rabbi Lazar. So what's the rationale of Rabbi Lazar that you get lashes for harisha for plowing? And where does he get it from? So he says like this: "V'Shabbos ha'aretz Shabbat l'Hashem." Yeah, the Torah says that the earth should rest. That's the klal. That sounds like any work of the land is forbidden. Then it says, "Sadcha lo tizra." You shouldn't sow your fields. V'kamacha lo tizma. You mustn't prune your vineyard. Now that's prat. These are two specific avodas of sowing and pruning. Now zera v'hazameh afhein bichlal hayu. Now they were included in the earth resting. So why are they singled out? Lama yatsu. Why were they singled out? This is Yatsum in a klal, to teach on the klal, lahakish aleh, to compare all the earth, all the work of the land of the Shabbos haaretz, v'lay melacha, to tell you, ma'azer azam miyuchadim, they are unique. Shein avoda ba'aretz uva'elam, their work which is done on the land, that's sowing on the land, and pruning a tree, right, which is a tree. And you get lashes for every loisaseh, just like any loisaseh. So something which is work for land and tree, you get lashes. So harisha, now plowing, is avodah of the land, but it doesn't have to be land and tree, land or tree, you can get lashes. So therefore you get lashes for working on the land. Alright? Now, Now, Ma Amalei Rabbi Yochanan. What does Rabbi Yochanan answer back to that? He says, Shnei Dvarim. Wait a minute, there's two things singled out here. Shnei Dvarim Jasmin a klal eno chalkin. They can't teach you for the klal when two things are singled out. Right? Not to start being mechalek, not for any other limud. You cannot learn from sowing and pruning that you get lashes on plowing. But less Rabbi Lazar eno chalkin. Now does Rabbi Lazar not hold of this in? That two things which are singled out, you can't apply them to the klal. They should be singled out as these two being unique. How can you learn from these two? Islay, he really does hold that two things Yasmin a klal are not chalkin. But he held, it's true, lachlok eno chalkin. Look, on the one hand, they don't divide up. So in other words, to start on each one on its own, they can't start dividing for each one on its own. So they can't tell you each thing you're chayav on its own right. But they can teach other dinim on the klal. They can teach. And what can they teach? You can learn from Zriya and Zmira, pruning and sowing. On the klal, you get lashes for harisha, for plowing. So in other words, now lachlok en chokin might mean you have to do them two together. It might not. That's the thing here. Whether they afcholkin, this is an additional point. It could be they're melamed on the klal, but they're not cholkin. They definitely are melamdin. We'll see. There's a difference between the two, right? Melamdin is telling me a din about the klal. Cholkin is if you're chayiv on them on their own right or not. You're chayiv on each one in its own right. Each one of the klal in its own right. You understand? That's lachalek. That's what that means. So it could be that eno cholkin. So they're not going to tell me that you're chayiv on each thing in the klal in its own right. But to tell me a din that is land and earth, whatever, that din they are teaching me. But last Rabbi Yochanan did. Does Rabbi Yochanan not hold of this difference? That when two things are singled out, you can't tell me a chayav each one on its own right, but you can tell me that they're chayav on the klal. So why doesn't he learn from Zriya and Zmira, your lashes for plowing? Shani here, this is different from other Yasmin and klal, because here, klal ba'aseh, or prat b'lo ta'aseh. The klal is the earth should rest, positive. The specific is don't sow, don't prune, which is negative. They're not the same. They're not in the same asay or loisa. So they can't learn one from the. You can't tell me Yosmin Aklal Lamed to teach on the other one when one is positive and one is negative. He says yes, and I say can teach you about loisa. He holds there's no difference. A klal with asay prat or the other way around is klal prat. You can still learn davar b'yotzmin a klal and so on, and therefore he says you can get lashes on chamish on shmita. According to Belaza, I understand why so you're allowed to dig in shmita various wells and pits and so on to gather water. There's no issur of malach of charisha. Because since, according to Belaza, we learn, the get of the issur is work on the land, work on the tree. Charisha is included in love. So charisha, is working on the land. Charisha for the sake of sowing. So the issur is charisha for the sake of sowing, right? Plowing for the sake of sowing. But stop digging a pit for a water reservoir, therefore will not be included in the issur. Right? That you'll be allowed to do. You just to dig something to put water in. According to Yochanan, he doesn't darshan davash yotzmin haklal. So the issur charish is an issur in its own right, and it's not learned from sowing or pruning. Then according to him, are you allowed to dig these water pits or not? On the one hand, kashem shem malamdin lenient issur. Look, sowing is not going to tell me the issur of plowing as far as issur. You should get lashes. Kei lenient heta, maybe digging water wells. We shouldn't learn that it's allowed. You're learning, if you can't learn from trees what the problem is, if we can't learn from sowing the ged of the issur, how do you know that digging a water reservoir, which is not, how do you know that it's permitted to do this sort of work on the land and it's not included in the issur of plowing? You know why Rabbi Yochanan holds you allowed to dig these water pits and so on? Where it says 6 years, Sheish Shanim Tizra, 6 years you sow your field, V'lo v'shvius, and not sowing in the Shemitah. It says Sheish Shanim Tizma Kamacha, 6 years you prune your vineyard, V'lo v'shvius, and not during Shemitah. So apart from the lavim we had, we can only saw him also from this pasuk. And this pasuk, the issur, is not a loisasa because when it comes from a positive asehu, it's considered a positive. There's no lashon loisasa. It's learned from a diuk of the asay. Yeah, this is, you can do 6 years. You can do that. It tells me the 7th year you can't. So it's got a din of an asay, and therefore you have isurei asay on zmira, on sowing and pruning, and the lashon is in lashon asay. So it's davash yotzmin haklal lelamed al haklal. Right, the klal is shav saharis, the land should rest. The protim is asay. Okay, so basically you can apply it to the klal, things which are working on the land and the trees, like plowing, whereas digging your water well, that will be permitted. As far as lashes is concerned, you cannot learn charisha from sowing and pruning because they are in a lashon loisasa. Because klal b'asay or prat b'loisasa, we don't darshan that. Okay. Now the Gemara brings an argument according to Rabbi Yochanan's view. You don't get lashes on plowing during Shemitah. So is there an issur asay then? So over ba'asay, does Rabbi Yochanan hold that if you plow during Shemitah, there is an issur asay, right? There's an argument. Rabbi Yosef, he says, I feel asay, but no, it's not even an asay. It's not even rabbinically forbidden. Rabbi Yirmiyah, he says over ba'asay. Yes, you are over. But if that's the case, why does it say the earth should rest? Can we not learn from that to asa all malachos on the land, even if they're not clear? So he says, according to Rabbi Yosef, that what it means is le'inyan loisasa shabai. The mitzvahs to rest from the land which are mentioned, the surim which are mentioned, don't sow, don't prune, those which are forbidden loisasa. Whereas malachos which are not written there, like plowing, is not included in the issur of the Torah. Now the Gemara comes back to the argument between Rabbi Yochanan and Belazar. Do you get lashes for plowing in Shemitah? And it brings a brisa which says you don't get lashes on Tosefes Shvius, extra Shvius. Do you remember what extra Shvius? Tomorrow is going to explain this brisa according to two opinions, according to Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar. Now Yachal, what does he mean extra Shvius? Yachal, you might say you're liking on a Tosefes, on that extra part of Shvius. Now, what does that mean? We'll see soon. First of all, the Gemara says, what is Tosefes? So there's two opinions. Rav Yochanan Pasamasi. So he explained the Mishnah, the Brisa is like this. Maybe we're calling plowing tesefes. Yeah, you hear that? We're calling plowing the extra. Why? It's not mufurish in the Torah, right? It's added on. It's additional isurim through drushes. And the Brisa is saying you don't get lashes for that, and that's like Rav Yochanan. You don't get lashes for charisha during Shemitah. Rabbi Elazar, now he holds you get lashes on plowing. So he can't explain the Brisa saying, oh, you don't get lashes on plowing. No, you do get lashes on plowing. So what is his Tosefos then? Now he's talking about, do you remember the periods before Shemitah begins? You could work the trees for a period of time in the fields. Pastor Lamasis, he explains, Yachi Yulaikin al Issa Shnei Prokim Arishainim. Do you remember there was an Issa to plow in the time leading up to Shemitah? There were 2 periods of time where you couldn't plow at the end of the 6th year. A grain field was from Pesach onwards, and a tree and orchard was from Shavuos of year 6. Remember that? And the Brisa said nowadays we don't keep that. Nowadays everything's permitted all the way up to Shemitah, yeah? And the Brisa is telling you, how do I know you don't get lashes on ploughing in these times? But Shavuos itself, you would get lashes for ploughing. So the Brisa is telling you don't get lashes on Chavisha in these 2 periods before Shemitah. Now the Gemara brings the Sefer of the Brisa, different gift size. Some say that the wording, 6 years you sow your field, and 6 years you prune the vineyard. And some the pasuk is Sadcha Light Isra, the Kamacha Light Isma. Now the Gemara explains with 2 versions here, so with different psukim. Where do we learn it from? Man, the one who holds Sheishanim Tizra Sedacha, Sheishanim Tizra Kamacha, Misayel Rav Yochanan. That's the support of Rav Yochanan. The whole question is, you don't get lashes on ploughing in Shemitah. Yeah, we're not talking about the period before. We're talking about ploughing in Shemitah, and it's learned from 6 years you sow your field. And we learn the Isulav Abba Michlala say that you mustn't sow during Shemitah, and sowing is singled out. So also Charisha ploughing is also Isra say, and you don't get lashes on ploughing in Shemitah. It's only an Isra say. Mandoma, the one who says the drasha is from the other pasuk, and in the 7th year, Shabbos and Yela Aretz, it says Sadcha Light Isra, the Kamacha Light Isma, right? You shouldn't prune your vineyard. Misayel Rav Elazar, that's supposed to Rav Elazar's view. The whole question is you don't get lashes for the ploughing in the period leading up to Shemitah. And that's learned Sadcha Light Isra, where that's where we learn you get ploughing, Malchus on ploughing in Shemitah, because sowing and pruning are excluded to teach on the klal. They come to tell us that you get lashes on the whole ploughing in Shemitah as well. And the pasuk starts with Vashana Shvis. The lav is only in the 7th year, not in the period leading up to the 7th year. So you see, according to Rav Elazar, then you do not get lashes on ploughing during the period leading up to Shemitah. Is that clear, Rabbi Isai? Yeah? So now, the Gemara comes on. Do we dash in cloud ba'aseh or prat b'leisaseh with something which has come out of the cloud to teach? The cloud is an aseh, and the prat is a negative. Can you still say, this has come out to teach me about the cloud? Masnisa pliga Rav Elazar. The Brisa, following Brisa, argues on Rav Elazar. It goes against what he said. Now the Torah says, you mustn't bring karbonos outside the Beis Mikdash. Right? You must be careful. Yeah? You must not bring your oilers wherever. And Hishamer is below Sasa, so there's a negative command. Pen is also below Sasa. So any Isur in the Torah, Hishamer, pen, is like a low Sasa. You get lashes for that. Uksiv, and it also says, where must you go? It says you must go to the place which Hashem will choose. There you will bring your oil offerings. V'sham ta'aseh. Right, there you'll do all I'll command you. Sham ta'aleh, there you'll go up. Zuha aliyah. This is putting various limbs on the Mizbeach, right? The Sham ta'aseh, the Zu shchita zrika. That is like slaughtering the carbon, sprinkling the blood on the Mizbeach. There's 2 Isurim. You mustn't put the limbs outside, outside the Beis Mikdash, you mustn't put the limbs. And don't slaughter a carbon and sprinkle the blood outside. Now the is of shchita and sprinkling is mentioned in Lashon Haseh. It says Sham Ta'aseh. Right? The issue to bring the limbs outside is from the earlier pasuk, Hishamer pen, which is a Lois Aseh. You hear that? So the 2 Isurim, one is a Lois Aseh, one's coming from an Aseh. But the second pasuk is next to the two surim are put next to each other, Sham Ta'alev and Sham Tazeh. So they're compared. And we learn, therefore, that shchita and sprinkling outside, there's also a loy saseh there. So we have a hekesh, we compare them, we say there's a loy saseh. So ma aliyah shiba aseh, just like putting aliyah, putting things which is an aseh, but harehi b'loy saseh, it's got the din of a loy saseh as well. He's shomer pen. Av shchita uzrika shehein b'aseh, so also slaughtering and sprinkling, you b'loy taseh, they will also have a negative as well. And the limud is because begin the chsiv sham ta'aleh v'sham taseh. Because of the hekesh, we therefore apply everything. However, had we not had that, had it not been written sham ta'aleh v'sham taseh, ein aseh melamed al lo saseh ve'ein lo saseh melamed al aseh, then one can't teach for the other can't teach for this one. So had we not had the hekesh, we could not have learnt the fact that the Torah singled out a lo taseh with halah, the other avodah of a korban has a lo saseh. We wouldn't have had it without the hekesh. Now, why don't we say the halah was included in all avodah and it's singled out to teach me about the klal? It's got a lo saseh. The reason why we can't say that because the klal, the sham taseh, is the lashon aseh, and the prat is lo saseh. And you see, without the hekesh, a klal with a positive and a specific with a negative, one can't teach for the other, right? And that's not like Rabbi Lazar. So the Gemara answers, according to Rabbi Lazar, the fact that there's a lo saseh v'shchita b'chutz, and it's learnt from Davish Yotzim in a klal to teach on the klal. Really, it is. It really is learnt from there. So why do you need the hekesh? There you will offer up. Why do we need the hekesh? You can learn asay from lo saseh, so why do you need the hekesh? It's telling you something else. Shaloi time, I don't say commanded tema gabe Shabbos. Now we find with Shabbos chofa, choratz, noatz. So you're making a trench in the ground or a groove in the ground. You dig something into the ground in one period of forgetfulness. You might say that you're chayav one because they're all tolda of one malacha of chodesh. Similarly, you will say, Shacha, you slaughtered, the zarak, you sprinkled blood, the hela, you put it on the mizbeach bachutz, right outside the Beis in one period of forgetfulness, you did 3 forbidden things. You might suggest, you're the chayav one. All the avodas, you're only opening one lav or bringing a korban bachutz. Shamelacha pentale, maybe they're all one. That's why you had to say no. Chayav. You chayav chatas. Kol achas v'achas on each one of the avodas because they're all compared. Sham Ta'aleh, Sham Taseh, just like halah, there's a separate lav in its own. So each one of the avodas is as if there's a separate lav on their own, and you'll have a separate korban for doing each thing. Now back to our Mishnah. The lashon in our Mishnah, avos and malachas. Kol under tanina. Whenever we mention avos, you know yesh lehen tolados. They have tributaries or secondaries, and the Gemara explains now 2 examples. Taramon tanina in Bava Kama we've learnt Abba Avos Nezikin, 4 types of damages, yeah, Hasho, etc. The ox. Zeh Keren, that is a reference to Keren is damage with the horn, yeah, goring from a horn. Right, we're not talking about animal eating something or trampling on something. And there are other Moraim in Bavli who use Shah for all damages of an animal, including what it eats and including what it tramples on. But here we're saying Shah is Keren. Like for example, an animal that damages Negir Chodachim by pushing. That's Av. The Nezikin are called Avos, right? That's the main damage. And then Befurish in the Torah. Goring, it says if an ox gores a person or his friend or whatever, other damages are not Befurish, are learnt from other drugs. They're told those, right? They're secondary things. Nashach, if an animal bit another animal, or rabat, so it trampled on vessels to break them, or ba'at, or it smashed things with its foot, it kicked them and broke things, tolados le keren, they are secondaries to keren, right? It's like an av, which has a tolda, which has like a secondary product, right? That's what they are. Okay. Taman Tanina, in Kalim we've learned, Avos the Tumah. What are the Av Tumah various? Hasheretz, which is one of the 8 Shratzim, Shechva Zera and Siman. Toldos Hasheretz, Ezehu, what's the Told of Sheretz? Rav Yehuda V'Shem Rav Nachum, Madafos. These are the more lighter Tumah things that they're trays of some kind. Did they give it a name there? They're more tuma kala, called madofa. Aleni daf. It means something lenient, something easy. Some say it's Elyona shel Zov. Kalim, vessels which a Zov carries them, which is Tuma Kala. But sometimes the Kavanah is the Tuma Drabanan. Here it doesn't mean either. It means Magais, things of touching, as we'll see. So Mal Madafa is what is this? Magais is what's touched the Sheretz, which is more lenient than the Tuma of the Sheretz itself. Because Ava Tuma, like the Sheretz itself, the Tames Hakol, defiles a person, defiles vessels, defiles food. Vlada Tuma, like the person or the keli that touched the sheretz, remember that only defiles food and drink, but not people and not kelim. So Vlada Tuma is more kal. Usually Vlada Tuma is Rabbanon, yeah? Then Tuma av min Torah. And then one carries on, food and drink, and then where vessels ain't as in Avatuma, they cannot become an av letame to defiling others. So even if they're tame in a way where a person and kelim are an avatuma, even like let's say a person touches a mace, tuma of foods can only be a vlada tuma, right? Tuma of foods can never get to avatuma. Now back to the lashon of avos in our Mishnah. So there you find references to av when it comes to tuma. And here we learn avos malachos 39. So there are toldas to these avos, and the Gemara explains now every malacha what are the toldas. Charisha. So let's start with the malacha of Cheresh. The first malacha in the list, ploughing. Av, that is an av. Tony Reb Chia, chafa, if you dug a hole in the ground. Charatz, you made a ditch or groove. Noatz, you pushed something into the ground, a peg. These are taladas lecharisha. They are secondary of charashon. Yeah, they're still asim and Torah, but they're not the avatar. What nafkamina is there, av or talda? It's not really a real nafkamina. If you do it behelam echad, you only chayav one chatas, right, for each av, and it's talda, right? The main source for all the malachas are learned from the fact that the Torah mentions the parsha of Shabbos close to the parsha of the Mishkan, and all the other malachas are malachas that were done in the Mishkan. So ma charisha is the Mishkan. What charisha was in the Mishkan then? They would plow to plant the dyes which were needed in the making of the Mishkan. Yeah. Some say is the dyes things for the Ketoros. Some say is that was needed to make the Shemen HaMishcha, or the dye for Techeles. Oris Elim Adamim, or the floor, the ceiling coverings on the Mishkan. Techeles, of course, wasn't done from plant life, it was done from the blood of a fish. But maybe for preparing it, they needed other things with it. Some say they used some money they had with them. They didn't actually sow anything in the midbar, but you need, since usually to need them, you do need to sow and plant. So these are included in the malacha. But whereas mashma, they actually ploughed to plant these things. But it says in Mitzrayim, the Medrash says in Mitzrayim, they knew that they're going to build a Mishkan, and they prepared things necessary for it. So maybe they planted and ploughed in Egypt to grow these things for the Mishkan.
In the same way they took wood.
Take to the wood, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's carry on. How much would a person plough and be liable? The amount to sow one seed of krisha, a type of vegetable. He said the shir is when you plough the sharp edge of one grain of wheat. Taman Tanina. Later on, we have learned the shir of chiv from one domain to another on Shabbos, taking food, the shir of a date, and seeds which are not eaten. Then, for sowing, it's got a smaller share. So zera kishuin, kishuin, was it cucumber seeds or something? What do they call it there? One who takes seeds of them,
Egyptian beans, isn't it?
Egyptian beans. There are kishuin.
No, cucumber seeds. Yeah.
Cucumber seeds.
Yeah.
Shanai, take 2. Chayv, you're liable. Zera diluim, the pumpkin seeds. Shanai, 2. Zera pulam mitzri, the Egyptian bean. Shanai, it's 2. Tiny with blood. Chitin madios, the wheat which comes from media, modai, then which is important. Shtayim, 2 seeds. Just a second. Rav Shmuel b'shem Rav Zira. Chitin the median wheat, even though they're there to be eaten, and you should say it should be a bigger share, growing share, like other foods, they are so important and significant that therefore, also as in Kashaz Redigina, they treat it as other garden seeds, which are not eaten, and because they're there for sowing and not for eating, the share is 2 of these seeds. And the median wheat, even though it's there for eating, again, it's so important, significant, 2 seeds. Okay, back to the Todas of Harisha. First, we're going to give another cloud. Kol Dava, everything okay there? Kol Dava, Hananas Karka, everything which is to improve the land and prepare it ready for sowing, Chayav Mishum Zerach Chayresh, you're Chayav for the Melacha of plowing, and anything which is a Todah of Harisha. Now the Gemara says, now let's see, HaChayfer, so digging a hole in the ground. HaChayretz, you make grooves in the ground. HaNayez, you push something into the ground. HaMadayer, you make what's it called? An area for animals to graze in, to manure the land. You make a little pen for them. Hama'ader, you are digging with a hoe in the ground where you can't use a proper plow. Hamazabel, you fertilize a field to sow there. Hamachabed, you're sort of leveling out the ground in the field with like a broom to smooth it off so there shouldn't be holes. Hamarabetz, you're pouring water on the ground in the field to sort of soften it. Yeah, which should be fitting for sowing. Okay? Amfapea gushim, you are sort of breaking them down, clumps of earth, to make it nice, moist earth, which is fitting for sowing. Amavre becharashim, you're cutting down forests in the forest, to prepare an area for sowing. Amazis zo'ur b'chishas kanim, you are making a fire with reeds which are there in your field, you're burning them, they shouldn't hold back the plow. Agam tamarim, or you're doing it in a sort of a meadow with the date trees there, and again you're burning them to make an area available for sowing. Or according to Zira and Shvius, Amas Hamayim, even digging a water ditch for the sake of irrigation is a Malacha Choresh. It allows the areas nearby for sowing. You're allowing the earth that you're taking away from this stream, you're mashing it for sowing, and this earth will be fitting for sowing. Hamasakel, if you remove stones from the field to sow. Haboina madregos, you build steps on a mountain. You make rows of steps in order to plow and sow on the various higher levels there. Right? Hamamale esanekaim, you fill up holes in the ground, shetachas azesim, the holes under the olive trees with earth. You make various patches around the vines to sort of irrigate that water, to irrigate these vines. And anything which is there for perfecting the land, you're chayav the malacha of chayresh. So now we're saying malacha of chayresh is preparing the land for sowing. Whether you're weakening the land, softening the land, improving the land. That's also brought in the Rambam. The Bavli says rafuye ara, to weaken the land. It doesn't say improving the land, it says weaken the land. But elsewhere, removing things, you're cutting things from mechubav, you're doing it to improve the land, you're chayav. Some Rishonim learn the chiyuv is because of chayresh, when you're improving the land, like what we've said. If you're cutting something for improving the land, you're chayav mishum chayresh. Okay, let's carry on. Now, also other things about chayresh. Reb Chiya b'shem Rabbi Yochanan. Hamvashal nevela b'yom tov. If you cook a nevela on Yom Tov, dead animal, you cook it on Yom Tov, ain't like it. You don't get malchus for the love of malach on Yom Tov, even though you can't eat it. Because shehutza b'chlal bishul b'yom tov. Because the Torah allowed you to cook on Yom Tov for what you want to eat. So if you cook something which you can't eat, although it's not eichel nefesh, you don't get lashes. The Shimon ben Lakish he says like it. Of course you get lashes. You're only allowed to cook what you're going to eat. You can't cook what you're not going to eat. Right? It's a proper malacha. You should get lashes. May I ask if that's the case? You know what? If you plow in Yom Tov, you shouldn't get lashes. Why? We find the Torah allowed you to do plowing for the sake of covering the blood when you've done shechita of a bird. And you cover the blood in Yom Tov. We learned one who shechs a chaya oif on Yom Tov, chayav kisei adam. And if you haven't got any earth prepared in advance, then you're allowed to dig with a decker to cover up the blood. Can you go and shecht even though through this you'll have to start digging to get the cover the blood. Beis Shammai allow you, Beis Hillel forbade it. According to everyone, if you're already slaughtered, you're allowed to dig to cover the blood. So therefore, according to you, when you're choresh, not for the sake, you don't get lashes. We learned elsewhere, choresh on Yom Tov, you should get lashes. Rabbi Yosef Hashem Rabbi Ila, Laihut Racharisha Kedarka. The Melacham choresh, the Torah would never allow it, even for the sake of Eichel Nefesh. The fact that you're covering this to cover the blood is because charisha is not really a melecha. This sort of thing is not charish min Torah. It's only rabbinically forbidden. Proper charisha is for the sake of improving the ground. Here you're digging to cover the blood, right? So it's not the same thing. Right here, you're doing it for the sake of just using the earth, sort of thing, right? So therefore it's not proper charish, it's not issa from the Torah. Rav Shammai Amakubi Rabbi Yasa, Rav Acha B'Shem Ravila. He says the Mishnah in Beitza allows you to dig to cover that blood, right? To Rav Shimon is Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon Amar, he said, Achi Hela Tzach L'Gufa Shal Dava. He says, Malach Shein Tzrich L'Gufa Your Potter, right? And since the digging is not for the sake of the ground, it's for the sake of the earth, it's Malach Shein Tzrich L'Gufa. There's not Asam in Torah. So we never allowed you Malachas Charishim in Torah for eating for Eichel Nefesh. We never allowed it. But according to the Chachamim, now they have Malach Shein Tzrich L'Gufa Your Chayav, like Rabbi Yehuda holds, in Bavli, then you're not allowed to dig on Yom Tov to cover the blood. And that goes against what Rabbi Yosef said here, that ploughing is not included in Charisha Gedarka and your Potter, according to everyone. He said even the Chachamim say your Potter. It's not included in Lechas Cherish. Come, Rabbi Yosef Rabacha. Rabbi Yosef met Rabacha. Amalei. He said, Ata ma da milsa. Did you really say this? What I've heard in your name, that only according to Rav Shimon, you're not chayav on the digging for covering the blood. And according to the Chachamim, you're chayav? Even though you don't really need the earth is just to cover the blood. You're telling me, according to Chachamim, you're chayav? If that's the case, didn't Rav Yochanan say Rav Meir? Esther Rabbi Tavarim, we could have Beis Shammai. So 24 things where Beis Shammai lenient, as opposed to most cases Beis Hillel lenient. But 24 cases Beis Shammai lenient. And this is one of them. Beis Shammai Beis Hillel Shchita and Yom Tov about covering the blood. Right, according to both, if you shechted, you're allowed to be doing chayfa. And Rav Meir probably holds like the Chachamim, the Mlach Shein Tzrich L'Gufa is chayav. It comes out, according to him, it's Asan Yom Tov to dig to cover the blood. And you have to say that, according to him, there was no argument with Shammai Hillel in this. You have to say there's no argument on them. But Neymar, if this is not one of the 24, because he held like the Chachamim, then there's only 23. Rabbi Yochanan should have said, according to Rav Meir, there's 23 cases where Beis Shammai are lenient. Because Rav Meir was strict. He couldn't have gone, it couldn't have been like Beis Shammai then. And it must be 23 cases Beis Shammai lenient, not 24. And he says, you know what? Rav Meir is not like the Chachamim. Rav Meir is like Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon Shnei Amar Davar Echad. Rav Meir is like Rav Shimon. Malach Shein Tzrich L'Gufa, your Potter. So the Mishnah in Beitz about the argument Beis Shammai Beis Hillel on covering the blood is like Rav Meir. But he holds like Rav Shimon. You don't need the earth for itself. You just need the earth to cover the blood. And that's why it's fine. Okay. V'lachein Savan and Meima. Now, did we not want to say that Rabbi Yossi Rav Shimon Am Shnei Amar Davar Echad? We wanted to say before that Rabbi Yossi also holds like Rav Shimon. That Malach Shein Tzrich L'Gufa. Actually, this is support to what we said. He also holds Malach Shein Tzrich L'Gufa Yapato. And since we find another Tana holding like Rav Shimon, and he's not a person on his own, then Neymar, you know what? If once you already told me Rabbi Yossi holds like Rav Shimon, I don't have a problem saying Rav Meir holds like Rav Shimon. So Rav Meir, Rabbi Yossi, Rav Shimon, they all say the same thing. Shlosha Namru Davar Echad. They all said the same thing. Allah is like Rav Shimon. Okay. Now another question on Racha. And a minute is Shriich L'Rabbanan Shita L'Chayin. Shita L'Rabbanan Shriich L'Chayin. Things which the Chachamim were not sure about. You, Rav Acha, seem to know it straightforward. And things which you know was not straightforward to them. What does that mean? The Chachamim said like this. Katza l'tzarech asavim. If you reap something on Shabbos, you want the grasses. You want the grass that you've cut. Are you chayav for that? You cut grasses which you want? Of course you're chayav. Chayav mishum katza. You're chayav for the malacha of reaping. But not for improving the land. There's no chayrish here. Although the land will be improved, but your intention was for the grasses, not for improving the land. So that's malacha of kaitza. The whole question is, kaitza, if you cut grasses, leyapos esakaka, to improve the land, and not for the sake of using the grass. Right? The whole question is, is where if you cut the grass to improve the land, that's where the question is, not where you wanted the grass. Okay, so mahu she'eh chayev mishum kaisa or mishum miyapes hakaka. So the question is, maybe you should be chayev too for cutting the grass and for improving the ground. Chayresh, you should be chayev. You want to improve the ground, but the question is, are you chayev also for reaping? Or maybe it's not normal reaping. Main machav katsira is to use that which is reaped, and not where you're covered as for any other purpose. Now, according to what you're saying with chayresh, you're digging to use the earth. You chayev b'shem chayresh. According to Chachamim, chayev. Even though the main purpose of the chavisha is for the sake of the land, that's partial. That actually the same thing with kaitzer. That if you kaitzer to improve the land, you're chayev kol kaitzer. Even though the main purpose is for the sake of that which is cut. But according to the Chachmei Yeshiva, they didn't know about this din, and that which was pashut, that kaitzer for the grass is you're not chayev b'shem chayresh. According to you, it's machlekes v'shivim and chachamim. According to chachamim, you're chayev. Let's just see this last bit of it again, unless we do it again tomorrow. We'll see. Let's see it again. So the question is like this: you cut grass to improve the land, and that's all your intention is. Are you still chayev because of kaitzer, for the melacha of reaping and improving the land? Improving the land, for sure. Your kavanah was for that. But are you chayev for kaitzer as well? That's what the chachamim weren't sure about. Maybe this is not normal cutting, because the main point of katsira is to use that which is being used. And here your intention is to improve the land. Now, melechas chayresh, you're digging to use the earth, if that's the case, you chayev chayresh. Now, the main purpose of the chavisha is for the sake of the land. That's partial the same thing with the kaitzer. You're cutting at the same time to improve the land, and you want what's coming out. You'll be chayev kaitzer as well. But they weren't sure about this. And, one thing, and also they said, look, if you just want the grass, you only chayev kaitzer, not chayresh. That, again, might be machlokes for Shimon and the chachamim. He says, if you're going to tell me that the suffix of the Chachmei Yeshiva was Reb Shimonu, the question is according to Reb Shimon's view. So when you're cutting, reaping, for improving the land, are you chayev for reaping? Because the melacha is not done for its normal purpose, for the sake of, it's not done legufa, it's done for that which is cut. Right, what's this? I feel it, Reb Shimon here, if you're going to tell me the same suffix is according to Shit of Reb Shimon, right, the melacha is legufa your potol. So now when you're reaping something for improving the land, that's not the normal purpose, right? Reaping is normally for what you want, the grass is, right? Are you chayev for kaitzer? It's not the melacha nasa legufa. It's not normally done like that. But they weren't sure. Maybe you're chayev for kaitzer because you're happy with it. You can use the grasses. Yeah, that wasn't my main intention, but you're happy with it. But Ram Krabanon, according to the Chachamim, melacha legufa you're chayev. So of course you're chayev because of chayresh and because of kaitzer. Because mikal mokem harei chash, at the end of the day you've improved the land, and mikal mokem harei kaitzer, and at the end of the day you've cut these grasses. And according to Ravacha, according to the Chachamim, you will be chayev in this case. Okay, I think we'll stop here, Rabbi Isai. Where did we stop?